In this podcast, two Gen Xers are taking a trip down memory lane, revisiting and reflecting on the cinema of the 1980s. We'll look at the hits and the flops, the studio blockbusters and art house indies, the critically acclaimed, and the universally reviled. The series is hosted by me, Lisa Molinelli, a writer and librarian, and features Dustin Morrow, a filmmaker, author, and professor of film. So pull on your leg warmers, crank up your boombox, and hop in the DeLorean. It's time for The Long Rewind. Welcome to The Long Rewind. I'm your host, Lisa. With me, as always, is Dustin.
Hello, everybody.
And this week, we are talking about Winona Ryder, Winona Forever. Why are we talking about Winona Ryder, Dustin?
Winona Forever. Wasn't that Johnny Depp's tattoo?
It was. That's why I said it. Yeah.
What didn't he famously change it into something else? Something kind of ridiculous?
I think he did, and I am not remembering now.
I mean, what do you do with
Winona
you
Forever?
Love words. What would you do with the letters in Winona Ryder to change that?
I mean,
you could use WIN and do something about winning or something.
Who knows what he did at this point?
You could keep the forever.
Right.
You'd have to think of something else that used the Winona letters that you were so committed to that you wanted to embolden your or emboss your devotion to it.
Yeah.
Forever on your arm.
Well, Johnny Depp's made some interesting choices in his life. I think that's all we can say about that.
Yeah.
So why are we talking about Winona Ryder other than
why are we talking
Johnny
about
Depp's
Winona
tattoos?
Ryder?
Yeah.
She's a somewhat oddball choice to discuss on an 80s movie podcast, as the bulk of her work and her fame comes from movies that were made outside of the 1980s. Mm-hmm. Although I'm sure both you and I would probably argue that her best movie was from the 80s. We'll talk about that later.
Yep.
The reason I thought maybe we should just discuss her in brief, at least, is that she seems to be, to me, the most Gen X actor.
Yeah, she's sort of like
the most representative actor of Generation X. And I was trying to think, in part because of the roles that she's played and what the movies she's been in have meant. But also, I was trying to think of, who else would it be if it wasn't her? And I was like, is it one of the John Hughes actors? Could it be Molly Ringwald, maybe? Could it be... I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think
Molly Ringwald would maybe be the other potential one, but I don't know. Yeah.
Winona just seems like it almost feels like you grew up with Winona in a way that maybe I don't feel that way about Molly Ringwald, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't know. Sure. I mean, Molly Ringwald's a little older.
Yeah.
I think she is definitely Gen X.
Yeah.
Though.
Yeah.
Winona's her Gen X bona fides. Is that how you say it?
I think so. Yeah, that seems right.
I think they extend beyond the work of a single film or filmmaker.
Yes.
And I'm not sure you could make that argument for Molly Ringwald.
I would agree.
I think whose relevance kind of went off a cliff when she stopped working with, even though she's still around and still doing stuff. Of course, she'll always be the John Hughes.
She's like a Hughes
Molly
muse,
Ringwald,
so
like
to
a
speak.
stuck in time.
Yeah.
And I would say even today, as we record this, Winona Ryder continues to feel like the Gen X actor, and that's because of stuff like Stranger Things, which is such a Gen X show, even though it's made by millennials. Yeah. That show has Gen X all over it.
Well, and that show's set in the 80s.
She is at the center of it.
It's set in the 80s, and she is a callback. So, it's clear that we're not the only people who think of her as sort of a Gen X 80s icon.
Yeah. So we'll discuss her, and maybe we'll get to the end of this, and we'll be like, we were wrong. But we'll work it out as we talk about it and see whether my inclination toward this idea has any, has anything to support it.
Okay.
So we'll talk about her roles, and we'll talk about we both did, I think, a little like top 5 favorite Winona movies.
Mm-hmm. We always have to have a list.
Yeah.
So,
but we could also talk about her just culturally as bigger than these movies.
Yeah.
Right. Remember what a big deal it was when she got caught shoplifting?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the Winona, I started the episode this way, the Winona Forever tattoo. Yeah, like there were things like that always popped up. The
relationship with Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
She has definitely existed as a celebrity outside of her movies in a larger than life way.
Yeah,
for sure.
definitely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, why don't you take us through, just because maybe a lot of people don't know about her history or her background, especially some of our younger listeners who maybe only know her from something like Stranger Things. Why don't you take us through just a little miniature bio of her, and then we can talk about what she means as a Gen Xer.
Okay. Well, here we go. Let's learn about Winona Ryder, whose real name or legal name is Winona Laura Horowitz, and she was born in Winona County, Minnesota. Her mother was an author, video producer, and editor, and her father is an editor, author, publisher, and antiquarian bookseller. This all feels like it makes a lot of sense, I think, when you hear it.
I think you'll find that a lot as you start to talk about her background.
Yeah. Her father also worked as an archivist for psychologist Timothy Leary.
Of course he did.
Who was also Winona Ryder's godfather, because of course he was. I mean, right. It's all.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Wow. That's incredible. Her father's family is of Ashkenazi Jewish descent and hails from the Ukraine and Romania. Growing up,
she has Ukrainian background.
She has Ukrainian background.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know that. I didn't know that either.
I knew she was Jewish. I didn't realize she had from the Ukraine.
I mean, that's not an unusual, that sort of Ukraine.
No, not at all.
Romania.
I just wasn't aware of it.
Yeah. Growing up, she visited her paternal grandparents in Brooklyn for the Jewish holiday of Passover every year. And she is named after where she was born. She's named after Winona, Minnesota.
Winona, Minnesota.
Yeah.
Would you have guessed?
I would not.
That Winona Ryder was a Minnesotan?
No, I would not have guessed that at all.
There seems to be nothing Midwestern about her.
Yeah, I know. I know. Now, this is also kind of interesting. It doesn't seem like it would be, but Ryder was given her middle name Laura because of her parents' friendship with Laura Huxley, writer Aldous Huxley's wife. Course. For God's sake.
So they knew Aldous Huxley.
They knew Aldous Huxley, Timothy Leary. I mean,
this is ridiculous.
That's crazy.
In case you thought she was like some no name from nowhere.
She didn't get on a bus from Indiana that nobody knew. Yeah, she knew some people, or her parents did.
Yeah.
Her stage name derives from Mitch Ryder, a soul and rock singer, who I don't know.
Do you know who that is?
I don't. Do you know who that is?
No.
Okay. Ryder's father is an atheist and her mother is a Buddhist, which also makes me think they must have moved from Minnesota at some point. But anyway, Ryder has a younger brother, Yuri, named in honor of the first man in space, Yuri Gagarin, and 2 older half-siblings from her mother's prior marriage. Ryder's, well, we heard this already, but there's even more to learn about family friends here. Ryder's family friends were her godfather, Timothy Leary, the Beat movement poets Allen Ginsberg and Lawrence Ferlinghetti, the science fiction novelist Philip K. Dick.
Wow.
I mean, wow.
She grew up around some interesting folks.
I can't even imagine what these dinners must have been like. In 1978, when Ryder was 7 years old, she and her family relocated to Rainbow, a commune near Elk, Mendocino City, California. So now maybe this all sort of comes together.
So she grew up
in a commune
called Rainbow.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
This is the kind of stuff I love. I love this kind of stuff.
This is a wild
These are the kind of stories I love reading. Okay. They lived there with 7 other families on a 300-acre plot of land. As the remote property had no electricity or television sets, Ryder began to devote her time to reading and became an avid fan of J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah, everybody else that age.
Yeah. However, isn't this, I mean, I don't know a ton about it, but weren't the Phoenix kids, didn't they have kind of this countercultural upbringing as well? I don't know if they were on a commune.
They grew up in like the rainforest and other places. I mean, they were way off the grid.
So this is like a weirdly not unusual upbringing for like a child stars
Hollywood
of the 80s.
Kid, yeah.
Weird. Anyway, when she was 10, Ryder and her family moved to Petaluma, California, so they didn't stay in the commune. During her first week at Kenilworth Junior High, she was bullied by children who mistook her for an effeminate boy. In 1983, 12-year-old Ryder enrolled at the American Conservatory Theater in nearby San Francisco, where she took her first acting lessons.
San Francisco. That makes sense, too.
Yeah, it all makes sense. During the same year, she nearly drowned, which caused her to develop aquaphobia. This aquaphobia caused problems later in life during her underwater scenes in Alien Resurrection, 1997, some of which had to be reshot numerous times.
Interesting.
Ryder's bullying experiences continued through high school when she achieved early film success with Beetlejuice, and she said, I remember thinking, ooh, it's like the #1 movie. This is going to make things great at school, but it made things worse. They called me a witch. In 1989, Ryder graduated from Petaluma High School with a 4.0 GPA. So, smart kid.
Well, she had a one-on-one tutor.
Yeah, she had a pretty good background.
But still,
there.
yeah, I don't mean to undersell it. Good for her.
Ryder has stated that her natural hair color is brown, but she was really blonde as a kid. And when she was 11 or 12, she started dyeing her blonde hair blue and purple. At the time of her audition for the 1986 film Lucas, her hair had been dyed black, and the filmmakers asked her to keep it. So this is what's interesting, because I think most of us, you see Winona Ryder in your head, and you see this very dark
black hair,
brown or black hair, the big eyes. I can't even imagine her without that hair. So it's interesting.
She was blonde in Edward Scissorhands, right?
That's true, but
she looked weird though.
She did look weird, and it was like a Tim Burton film, so it was just like different. I don't know, whatever.
Her pale complexion lends itself to the black hair goth look, and so when you see her with some other look,
I think that's
strange.
That's maybe the only other time I've seen her with different hair. But yeah, I mean, I've always loved her look.
Also part of it is like a lot of these people are your first, especially when they shoot to fame for like a big role, you're forever like their look in that role.
That's how you see them.
Is how you see them. And so for her, it's like, even though she did Lucas before, like it's Beetlejuice, right?
Beetlejuice,
where she couldn't be more goth. And so,
right.
Yeah, it has become fixated in my brain as like this goth figure.
Yeah. In 1985, Ryder sent a videotaped audition where she recited a monologue from the novel Franny and Zoe by J.D. Salinger to appear in the film Desert Bloom. I don't know that film, but there it is. Although the role went to Annabeth Gish, writer-producer David Seltzer cast her in his high school drama Lucas, which you just mentioned, and that starred Corey Haim, Charlie Sheen, and Carrie Green. When asked how she wanted her name to appear in the credits, she suggested Ryder as her surname because a Mitch Ryder album that belonged to her father was playing in the background. Ryder's next film was Square Dance, where her teenage character creates a bridge between two different worlds, a traditional farm in the middle of nowhere and a large city. I've never seen that movie.
I just saw it recently. It's not very good.
She won acclaim for the performance, with the LA Times calling it a remarkable debut. Both films were only marginally successful commercially. After seeing her in Lucas, director Tim Burton cast Ryder in his film Beetlejuice from 1988. Ryder starred as a goth teenager whose family moves to a haunted house populated by ghosts, played by Gina Davis, Alec Baldwin, and Michael Keaton. And as we know, she has reprised that role in Beetlejuice. The film was a success at the box office, and the film, as well as Ryder's performance, received mostly positive reviews from critics. Also in 1988, Ryder appeared alongside Kiefer Sutherland and Robert Downey Jr. in 1969, a drama about the Vietnam War and the tensions it created in American families. I've never seen that one either.
Yeah, I remember seeing it. It's not very good. Mm-hmm. I remember thinking when I saw it, and this is funny because she has done so many period pieces.
That's true.
But she only works in specific periods.
Yeah,
and
I guess that's true.
Winona Ryder as like a 60s hippie is very strange, even though it sounds like, she grew up in a commune apparently. And
it was kind of her life.
Should have like, some experience with that. Somehow like Winona Ryder in a, what do you call it? Why am I blanking?
Like a tie-dye shirt?
No. The thing women wore in the old Victorian.
Oh, a corset.
A corset.
Yeah.
Winona Ryder in a corset like makes total sense to me, but like Winona Ryder in beads and...
Well, of course, it's way more goth than the hippie look. So,
I guess so. Maybe that's it.
She's considered
maybe there's a relationship
sort
there.
of a goth fashion icon in some ways, I think. Ryder next starred in the independent film Heathers of 1989. The film, a satirical take on teenage life, featured Ryder and Christian Slater as high school sweethearts who begin killing off popular students. Ryder's agent initially begged her to turn the role down, saying the film would ruin her career. Critical reaction to the film was largely positive, though, and Ryder's performance was positively received, with the Washington Post calling Ryder Hollywood's most impressive ingenue. Ryder makes us love her teenage murderess, a bright, funny girl with a little Bonnie Parker in her. She is the most likable, best-drawn young adult protagonist since The Sexual Innocent of Gregory's Girl. I don't know what that means, but that's what they said in the Washington Post. Despite its critical success, Heathers was a box office flop, but has achieved the status of a cult film in the following decades. Ryder's other 1989 starring role was in the biopic Great Balls of Fire, in which she played the 13-year-old bride and cousin of rock and roll idol Jerry Lee Lewis.
Yeah, so that takes us to the end of the 80s. So her career was sort of just getting started.
Yeah.
She went on very shortly to do Edward Scissorhands in 90. And that same year, she also did Mermaids with Cher and Christina Ricci.
Yep.
And Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael.
Yep.
2 movies that you and I have watched recently.
Yeah, very recently.
We had a little Winona Fest recently, I guess, almost by accident. But yeah. And then she did Night on Earth with Jim Jarmusch. And then Dracula with Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah, she's worked with some big names.
Yeah, and then did The Age of Innocence with Scorsese.
Gosh, I never thought of that. Back-to-back Coppola and Scorsese. That's pretty
and
wild.
House of the Spirits. So she was just cranking out these like corset
She
movies,
was. That's true.
For that 92, 93. She was never out of a corset. And then went back in. She did Little Women in 94.
That's true.
But also did Reality Bites.
Yes.
Which I think is probably her biggest claim to the Gen X
icon
status, mantle, whatever, is probably individually that movie.
I would think so.
Right?
For me, it is.
Yeah. I mean, Reality Bites gets talked and written about to the degree that it's remembered at all as sort of the ultimate Gen X movie.
Yeah.
And it really is. It's about... Ryder plays a budding, struggling documentary filmmaker who has a couple roommates, Janine Garofalo, who essentially plays Janine Garofalo, and Ethan Hawke, who plays this sort of lazy Seattle grunge.
Yeah, it's set in Austin or in like the Texas.
I think so, yeah.
Or something, but yeah.
He's this sort of sarcastic, lazy... character.
He's sort of iconic Gen X boy.
How do you describe him? Yeah, total Gen X boy. Like wearing like the Kurt Cobain sweaters, and he's got the kind of Kurt Cobain greasy long hair.
Yeah, he wears these vintage button-up shirts.
He plays music, and he's just sort of like, he's got all these ideas about philosophy and stuff, but he can't hold down a job to save his life.
And he's very disaffected, Totally disaffected. He's got his band is called Hey, That's My Bike, as I recall.
That's right.
Yeah, so like, we're talking.
Right. And so the movie is essentially a love triangle between that character and a character played by Ben Stiller, who plays this rising star producer for an MTV-style network.
Yeah.
Who offers Winona Ryder both professional opportunities to kind of do nonfiction work for his MTV-like network, and also, you know, a romantic alternative to the Ethan Hawke character as a guy who is more responsible,
successful, put together,
but also maybe a little like this is where, I don't know, we could talk about this movie. I have such mixed feelings about this movie. It's I remember at the time watching it when it came out and kind of hating it, partly because, you know, I think a Gen Xer, we're wired to hate anything that tries to define us.
Sure. Yes.
You know, I mean, I guess we could go really big and talk about what Gen X even means, but we should probably do a whole episode on Gen X, so we'll just save that for another time. But And this movie will come up again if we do that
of course.
episode.
That and Singles and
Singles.
whatever.
Oh my God, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I remember like thinking, well, she should go with the Ben Stiller character.
But he's the sellout, man. I mean, that was
the movie's argument is that he's this sort of like sellout. corporate 80s, like a rejection of, to the degree that like the grunge scene and the Gen X ethos and everything of the early 90s was about rejecting the commercialism and the embrace of money that came out of the 80s.
Yep.
He represented that, and Ethan Hawke did not. And so she ends up with Ethan Hawke at the end of the movie. Yes. And I remember just thinking, kind of hating the Ethan Hawke character, partially because there were so many of him actually around.
Right.
You know, as somebody,
as a man, this would not have appealed to you.
As somebody studying film at the time, like everybody I knew was just like the Ethan Hawke character. And I just got so tired, and I probably was too a little bit, but I just got so tired of those guys. Yeah. And I was just like, don't end up with that loser. Like all of her inclinations to thinking that he's a loser, I thought were correct. Like everything she says about him, he is lazy. He does have no ambition. He is too sarcastic. He doesn't take anything seriously. Right. You know, it's just sort of like, ugh.
He's the embodiment of whatever, which is a very Gen X thing, totally. Right? Yeah. So
cooler than thou.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Gen X, to the degree that it can be annoying, I think. I mean, every generation when they're young can be annoying. And they are all annoying.
Absolutely.
All generations can be annoying when they're young. And we were no exception.
No.
And the degree to which we were annoying, I thought, largely came out of that like anti-sellout. Yeah. To the point where, as we've discovered in writing about Generation X since that period, was a bit of a come on, because the statistics surrounding Generation X show that we were actually one of the most ambitious generations in recorded history.
Well, and I would argue, I'm betting
and
that
really
that's
responsible
so many
and like,
generations.
You know, it's we're not like what you would have thought we would have turned out to be based on the kind of Kurt Cobain identity,
the whatever attitude, the grunge attitude
of the early 90s.
Yeah,
I think it was just kind of, a lot of it was just an overcorrection from the 80s, an overreaction to what young people perceive to be negative about the 80s. I
mean, which I imagine and think I've read is pretty typical of most young people. Oh, yeah. You're always reacting to...
Well, Linklater has that great line in Dazed and Confused, the Marissa Ribisi character. She's like, oh, you know, the 50s were, or the 60s were so awesome, and the 70s, they so obviously suck. Like everybody thinks that the decade that they're coming out of as a young person was
the
lame,
worst.
Because you're cooler than your era.
And you're looking to move
I mean,
forward.
we all know now. Yeah. I mean, we can look back. I mean, you and I have the whole show about the 80s. We obviously think it's a really fun, interesting, cool decade.
But you have to rebel.
Yeah. You have to rebel.
I mean, we're talking about how Ethan Hawke is so iconically Gen X, but part of our argument here is
he would be maybe another contender, right? For this, like for this thing. There's somehow she seems to be more than an actor.
So I guess
than he does.
Right. Yeah. But what I'm saying is like, so if we're saying that about him, why do we think that about her, especially from this movie? Like, why do we?
What's that?
Why Winona. I mean, we're talking. It's just a Winona episode, right? So why Winona? Why is she the Gen X icon? Since we just talked some.
She's the center of that movie.
She's the protagonist. She's the hero.
She's the character that has to make the decision about whether she's going to go with. Is she going to sell out, or is she going to be an artiste? Yeah. It's a love triangle, but it's really not about the love triangle at all. It's about how is that generation going to define itself going forward? What are our values?
Right.
And what are we hoping to accomplish?
Yeah.
And you can argue whether she makes, like I said, I've changed my tune on it a little bit. I've seen it in more recent years, and I find the Ben Stiller character totally insufferable. I actually think the better ending would be the
You say this a lot,
Breakfast Club ending, right? Like, I don't see why Ali Sheedy and Emilio Estevez have to get together at the end of that movie. And I don't see why Winona has to go with either of these guys. I think they're both losers. And I think like the more triumphant ending would be that she realizes she doesn't need either one of them.
Right.
But, whatever. It's a romantic comedy. And so, Ethan Hawke is the better looking guy. Clearly. So she's got to go with Ethan Hawke.
Plus she is how old? I mean, these are the decisions you make when you're 22, 23.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's totally realistic that she would make a bad decision. And so, it makes sense that she goes with the Ethan Hawke character.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He is dreamy, even though he's at his greasiest looking.
I mean, many of us thought so for some reason.
Yeah.
I can understand why you would have thought he was terrible. But for some reason, we ladies thought he was just.
So, we can argue I would argue that that's like the most Gen X movie. The Cameron Crowe movies are extremely Gen X,
of course.
Too.
And Richard Linklater, like you were saying.
And Richard Linklater is, Slacker. I mean, we'll do it. We should do it.
Yeah, I just was trying to bring us back to Winona here. Yeah.
It'll be interesting because it'll be mostly a discussion of 90s movies.
Of course. I mean, which makes sense.
The John Hughes movies, even though they're hugely important to Gen X, are the brainchild of a boomer.
Yeah.
They were written by and created by a boomer.
That's true.
It doesn't make them boomer movies necessarily. He was, by all accounts, he had a mullet and he hung out with his actors. He hung out with Molly Ringwald when she was 16, which sounds creepy, but apparently it was completely innocent. They would just go and listen to music together.
And he was really into new wave, right?
Yeah, exactly. He was totally into music and fashion that was popular among young people. He was a big kid, but he was, at the end of the day, he was a boomer. That was a big year for her, even though Reality Bites was a bomb. I remember Little Women being kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it at the time.
And then she does like How to Make an American Quilt. Mm-hmm. She does The Crucible, a really good version of The Crucible.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
With Daniel Day-Lewis and Joan Allen. Mm-hmm. And then makes the Alien sequel, which was terrible. And then does like Being John Malkovich and like Zoolander. She does these tiny little parts in these movies. But most of her kind of starring roles at that point for a good long time are not successful at all. Mm-hmm. Has a bit of a comeback in the 2010s with like Black Swan, but really,
I didn't remember she was in that.
Yeah, it's not until Stranger Things.
Yeah, she's had a resurgence
she has
recently.
Of a real resurgence as a star, and I think maybe sort of quote unquote gets her due. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's true.
But yeah, so the other key text, I think, outside of Reality Bites is, I think, inarguably Heathers.
Absolutely. Yes.
And I'm guessing that it's your number one Winona Ryder movie.
It is my number one Winona Ryder movie.
It's mine too, movie. And it's my number one by a very comfortable margin over by number two.
Yeah.
Same.
I
think it's one of the smartest comedies ever made. I think it's one of the...
So sharp.
My God, maybe one of the 5 best screenplays ever written.
I think every
That's
time...
how good the writing is. I think you and I have said this before, but it's a movie where the writing is so good that I almost can't believe what I'm hearing sometimes.
I know.
You can't laugh at it because it's so smart.
I think
you're more in awe. You're so in awe of it that you forget that you should be laughing at it because it's so funny.
Every single time we watch it, I feel like I sit there with my mouth hanging open. Like this writing is so good. I mean, it doesn't get old. Somehow it just does not get old. Yeah.
It's wild how little that guy did after that movie, which is it was just like a comet. It was just a once in a lifetime.
It's amazing
script.
Yeah.
But it's incredible.
I think she's really good in it too. Like,
yeah.
She's
so
great.
Could you make an argument for Heathers as a Gen X movie?
I think so.
Let's hear it.
Well, I don't know what, I mean, I don't know. How do you make this Gen X argument? I'm not really sure. I guess it's
Gen X was largely, here's what I'll say.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just talking out of my ass here, but Gen X was largely about not conforming, right?
Yes.
And that's largely what Heathers is about.
Oh, yeah. Well, and
even her name, she's Veronica, but
in a group of Heathers. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And her rebellion against them is against rebelling. It's a rebellion against all the things that they do that are all exactly alike. That they all the Heathers have the same worldview.
Yep.
Same interests.
Yep.
The same aesthetic. They all kind of look alike.
Yep.
Even the brunette. I mean, they all wear kind of the same makeup and same clothes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she does too at the beginning of the movie, and then
slowly realizes she hates
I feel like kind of embraces
yeah.
her Generation X.
Yes.
Yeah. Mission.
Yeah, I think maybe that rebellion, and that rebellion also could be seen as a rebellion against the 80s, against, the things that we were talking about in Reality Bites, like against the sellout, against success, whatever.
Yeah,
it could be seen against money, against the suburbs, essentially.
Yeah, there's all those great scenes with her parents.
Yep,
like she obviously comes from money, but she has this very funny relationship with her parents where she kind of insults them every time she's around them, but they don't seem to get it.
Very sarcastic attitude. She is that's another very Gen X thing, right? She's pretty sarcastic.
Oh yeah, she's very arch, very dry.
Very arch. Yeah. And so is her crazy boyfriend, Christian Slater, who I would argue that's also a pretty Gen X character in some
totally.
ways.
He's a total, even though his aesthetic and it's pre-grunge, so there wasn't grunge to pull from. He's more punk. Right. But I would argue that the grunge,
it's proto-grunge.
Yeah, the grunge thing, the whole idea of burn it all to the ground.
Right.
That's very much his.
Yeah, like a whatever,
thing, right?
Nothing matters.
He literally wants to burn it all to the ground.
Yeah.
He wants to blow the school up.
He's got more ambition than Ethan Hawke does, that's for sure, just in a very different nihilistic way.
Yeah.
I think all of that is very Gen X. Maybe not nihilism, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
As you say, the burn it to the ground thing. She's got this incisive scales falling off the eyes, thinks she's seeing things for what they are, kind of thing. That's kind of Gen X, I think. And the fact that it's set in a high school and but it's a weird high school movie. I think that's kind of Gen X about it too. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The sort of suburban high school weirdness thing.
So looking at her filmography, do you see other places where you would argue there's meat for the argument that she's the Gen X actor?
Well, we talked about Reality Bites already.
Yeah, but beyond those two, I'm just trying to figure out, because when I started thinking about this, maybe we should do an episode about who's the most Gen X actor. And then I thought, well, it's got to be Winona Ryder, right? Mm-hmm. And I was trying to think of who else it would be, and I couldn't think of anybody more Gen X. But now that I'm looking at her filmography, I'm sort of is it based really on those two movies? Little Women was a very Gen X version of Little Women. Why do you say that? Well, I haven't seen it since then, but my memory, isn't it the one with Claire Danes?
It is, Claire Danes is in it. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it just...
Female filmmaker.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it just felt like a very... Wasn't it... this has been done with Little Women 4 more times since then? Mm-hmm. But isn't it... It was sort of the first modern...
That I remember,
even though it's not modern, it's what I mean.
No, it's set in the time it's set
in the time.
Made at
the consciousness of it, whatever you want to call it, the flavor of it is very contemporary.
It's different from, say, the Katharine Hepburn Little Women is what I think you're getting at. Yeah, I think that's true. Isn't it Gillian? What was the name?
Gillian Armstrong.
Yeah, Gillian Armstrong was the director.
Yeah.
I think, and maybe that's. You see people cast her and you think that they're doing it because it's kind of zeitgeisty, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because
that's certainly true now. She would not be in Stranger Things if she wasn't the sort of center of Gen X.
But don't you think that's why you cast her as a Jo March, in Little Women,
for sure.
right?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I think that...
even then she had kind of cemented her status.
I think that's...
Yeah.
That's a thing.
She was just she was perceived as being, like you said, she was running around with Johnny Depp.
Yep.
She was just perceived as being
She's a cool girl, absolutely
in
a
the
cool
way
girl.
That Molly Ringwald wasn't.
Right. She was a cool girl. I think even Beetlejuice wacky as it is.
Oh yeah, that definitely. Well, just an association with
the goth subculture. Yeah.
Well, and with Tim Burton.
Tim Burton,
somebody
yes,
who works
right.
kind of outside the Hollywood mainstream, even though he's making Hollywood movies.
Yeah.
He's making these aggressively weird, big budget movies, and she's often at the center of them. You know?
Yes. I mean, and I think Beetlejuice is very, it's got that goth subculture feel. Even something like Edward Scissorhands, I think, has that, and some of that's Tim Burton. But I think she's connected to that, which, frankly, I think is a pretty Gen X thing, the goth subculture situation. I don't know that we were the first generation to do that. I don't really know enough about goth history, but I don't know. I think all those things make that argument.
I don't know for sure either. I would assume that the goth thing kind of came out of New Wave.
Yeah, New Romantics, New Wave.
New Romantics.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, I don't know.
You could see her trying to do that stuff in some of her less successful movies, like Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael, which is a terrible movie, tries to do some of that. I mean, her segment in the Jarmusch movie Night on Earth tries to do some of that. Certainly, like Dracula, because it has actors like Keanu Reeves in it, is that's a very specific take on Dracula.
That feels like a Gen X Dracula too, in some ways.
That was made by Coppola. It does feel kind of like, and The Crucible is kind of the same way. Like there's a lot of her filmography is.
She's often cast with some pretty moody Gen X-y actors too, like Johnny Depp or Christian Slater or Keanu, whatever. People, they may not actually be moody, but that's the vibe you get from them in these movies.
Okay, so let's run down our top. I actually did a top 10. Did you just do a top 5?
Oh, you did a top 10? I did a top 5, but...
All right, here's my bottom 10. Then, or my bottom 5 of my top 10.
Yeah.
So I had Night on Earth.
Yeah, that's great. She's great in that.
Yeah, it's definitely what it is it's a oh God, why am I thinking?
It's an anthology film.
Anthology. Good God, my brain is toast.
Yeah.
Couldn't think of the word anthology. It's an anthology movie by Jim Jarmusch.
It's great.
Set in taxi cabs in all these different cities around the world.
Yeah.
Her segment is the first one in the movie. She plays this she's basically playing Winona Ryder as a cab driver, and she picks up Gina Rowlands, who plays, essentially playing herself too, kind of an aged actress. And they have this little connection, and it's definitely the weakest segment in that movie. It's the opening segment. Yeah, there's some pretty stellar segments in that movie. Yeah. And she's, I think, weirdly unconvincing, but the movie is so good, and Gina Rowlands is so good that it's sort of saved. But I would argue that she's kind of the worst part of that movie.
Interesting. But it's still your number 10.
Well, because the movie is so good.
Yeah, it is a great movie.
I should have based this on Winona. This.
Well, it's hard. That's a great movie.
Smarter way to do this.
But it's a great movie. You're right.
But
it's so good. Yeah.
She's actually an actress. I've never disliked her, but I've never I don't think I've ever sat down to watch something because she's in it. I can't say I've ever exactly been a fan.
I think she's often pretty likable, though, even if the movie's not great.
And I think she's okay. She's a limit. I mean, I don't think she's an amazing actor, but I think what she does really well. She has a little bit of a shtick. Like she does kind of the same thing in every movie, in a way. I don't know that she has a lot of range, but
that's how you get hired, though, right?
Yeah, exactly. You establish your identity, and then people keep offering you, especially when that's what audiences want to see. People keep offering you that part until they don't, which is why she disappeared for 10 years. And although she's worked every year, but she stopped making movies that people were seeing. At 9, I had Dracula. 8, I had Age of Innocence. I actually think she's quite good in that.
I'd like to see that again. It's been a while. Yeah.
It's the Scorsese adaptation of
Edith Wharton.
Yeah. It's quite lovely. It's Daniel Day-Lewis and Michelle Pfeiffer.
Oh, she did 2 movies with Daniel Day-Lewis.
Parts of those, that love triangle.
Yeah.
And then I had 7, I had Mermaids, which is a flawed but kind of fun comedy, where set in the 60s, where she plays this extremely, how would you describe her? Repressed, Catholic girl.
I
who
kind
has
of love
this
her
wild
character.
Mother,
yeah.
played by Cher, and she's sort of kind of the responsible character in the family.
Well, here's where this is another great touchstone, perhaps Gen X performance when you think about it.
Okay.
I like Mermaids a lot. I actually had it at number 3. I'm a fan. I mean, think about it this way. Like, she's sort of the responsible latchkey kid almost, right? She's parenting her mom. Her mom is always off to, her mom's maybe like a crazy hippie, always off doing things. And she's like dressed all in black, wants to be a nun, like has these ideas about, these kind of wacky ideas about how to live that are completely opposite from her mother, very rebellious. Yeah, I don't know. I think it could be seen as pseudo Gen X.
Yeah, it's fun.
Set in the 1960s.
It's a breezy watch for sure.
Yeah, I like it.
And then at 6, I had Reality Bites, which I've always had mixed feelings about Ben Stiller as a filmmaker.
Oh, that's right. He made that. I forgot for a minute.
Yeah, he directed it.
Yeah, of course.
I don't think he wrote it. And as I said, when I saw it, when it came out, I was just like, ugh. Because I didn't like that she ended up with Ethan Hawke.
Yeah.
I enjoy watching it. I watched it a few years ago, and I actually was surprised how much I enjoyed it. But it was sort of like because it's such a time capsule.
Yeah.
Of its era. I mean,
you can
Evan Dando is in it.
That's right.
I mean, it's just. I mean,
I think she dated him. Maybe.
What's more '90s than like Evan Dando and Janine Garofalo?
Didn't she date
anything?
Didn't Winona Ryder date Evan Dando? So this is another thing. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Okay, so getting into the top 5, my number 5 was Black Swan.
I didn't remember she was in that, so that
she plays
didn't make my list.
She plays the older, retiring ballerina.
She definitely has a ballerina
Natalie
look.
Portman is replacing, and she's very bitter about it, and very angry, and it's just a very like, it's a little on the nose having young Natalie Portman come in and push out old Winona Ryder, but she's good in it. She's very like very, very bitter.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't remember that at all. That's interesting. Yeah.
It's such a ridiculous kind of over the top art horror movie.
Yeah.
And I've always quite liked it. What was your number 5?
I had Reality Bites at number 5. Okay. It's an important Winona movie.
You didn't say how you felt.
About Reality Bites?
About how it ends.
Oh.
Are you happy that she ends up with Ethan Hawke? Were you happy at the time?
At the
time,
you still
happy?
I haven't seen. First of all, I haven't seen that movie even as recently as you, so I haven't gone through the emotional journey recently.
I don't know that I would call it an emotional journey.
At the time, I was happy with the ending.
Okay,
because I was 15, 16.
Ethan Hawke was cute. Yeah,
I mean, I was 16. Like, come on, that's. You're an idiot. So, now I could see, like, I don't remember the Ben Stiller character well enough to know whether I would have thought she should have gone with him, or I think that what probably now as an adult, like watching it as an adult would be one of those experiences of like, you're seeing it and thinking, oh, child, no, please don't do that.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're feeling more like the parent.
Yeah. Take the job at MTV.
Right, exactly. Like,
moron.
what are you doing? Yeah. So I suspect I would be less happy with the ending, other than just enjoying a happy romantic ending, which I generally do. I think probably your take would make the most sense, but it's been a while since I've seen it. At the time, of course, again, I was a 16-year-old girl. I thought it was great. Yeah. So, and I think for me, it was like an aspirational movie because again, these people were older than me and I was like, they're so cool. And even though obviously those were terrible life choices, but.
So my number 4 is Lucas.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And she has a pretty small part in it. She plays Lucas is a movie where Corey Haim plays this very young, he's like freshman in high school. He's like 14 or 15. I think he's 14.
Very young looking 14.
Yeah, very kind of unusual, eccentric, nerdy, super smart kid who falls in love with a cheerleader played by Carrie Green, who is falling in love with a football player played by Charlie Sheen, who is a nice guy. He's like, you're not your usual 80s movie football guy. He actually cares for Lucas and looks out for him because Lucas like tutored him or helped him when he was hurt, brought his homework to him every day or whatever. So they kind of have this friendship. So it's a really tender, unusual teen movie. Very, very sweet. birth of the slow clap, I believe. Maybe the
Do you think so?
80s movie
Could it
slow
be?
clap.
Wow. That's quite a
Certainly one of the best, if not the earliest.
quite a statement, yeah.
Yeah. And Winona plays a girl in the school who has a crush on Lucas. And Lucas is friends with her, but he doesn't at all he doesn't understand that she has a crush on him. He completely doesn't get it. And she's very sweet.
Yeah.
But kind of slightly
gawky,
offbeat
maybe. Yeah.
And quirky in the way that you would cast Winona to play. Mm-hmm. But it's a note that I didn't see her play a lot in later movies. She's really sweet. She's very cute and
like sweet and gawky kind of. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And not cool.
Right. Yeah, she often is the cool girl.
Yeah. And so I like her in it quite a bit.
She's not. Go ahead. I was just going to, she's not terribly sweet in Mermaids, but she is very gawky. That did come out in the Roxy Carmichael part. She's kind of gawky in that too.
Yeah.
But not sweet. You're right. Yeah.
What was your number 4?
I had Beetlejuice at number 4.
Yeah. So I had that at number 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's iconic. Winona. It's not a movie I've actually seen all that often. But it's a pretty iconic movie, pretty iconic part.
She's sort of even though she does do something kind of tricky in it, which is she plays this kind of oddball goth girl, but also at the same time has to be the stand-in for the audience.
Right.
Because she's the character that interacts with Beetlejuice, and the parents are kind of out to lunch, right? They're like these self-absorbed, Reagan-y,
right.
people. And
yuppies.
Yeah, yuppies.
Uber yuppies.
And so to the degree that the movie has a character that has to react to how outrageous Beetlejuice is.
And see both sides of the coin.
And pull you narratively through the movie. Like that's all being done by Winona when she was 16 years old when they shot that?
Something
15,
like that.
16?
Mm-hmm.
So it is she is doing quite good work.
Yeah.
In that movie. Yeah.
That makes sense. And I think she's done this a few times. Like she's one of those people who can manage to play what could be a pretty annoying character, like the annoying teen or the annoying whoever, but actually you're not annoyed.
You still kind of like her.
Yeah, you like her. And she does that many times.
Yeah, that's not
a
always
very
easy.
common role for her.
I mean, Mermaids is a good example.
Yeah, it's a great,
right?
exactly. Mermaids is a really good example.
If you actually knew that girl from
you'd be
Mermaids,
you'd be like,
oh, this
But I
girl.
actually find her really likable.
She's kind of endearing.
And same with Heathers even to some degree. Mm-hmm. So she does that really well. Yeah.
What was your number 3?
It was Mermaids, like we said. Yeah.
What was your number 2?
I had Edward Scissorhands.
As did I.
I love Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah. This is an unusual thing for her because she's kind of playing the popular cheerleader girl.
Yeah, very ingenue.
Yeah. I mean, he did a weird, this was the first movie to cast Anthony Michael Hall as a villain.
Yeah. It feels like an interesting flip on the teen movie.
He's like a tough football guy instead of, and he was kind of bulked up by that point and much bigger. And so he's like playing the bully, the character that would have bullied his own characters.
I remember thinking about that movies. At the time that this felt like such a flip on the teen movie to me. Like it was so Tim Burton, so quirky. Yeah.
And she again is like kind of the stand-in for the audience in that movie too.
Yeah.
It has that pretty awful framing device where she's an old lady
I always forget
her
about
granddaughter about Edward.
Yeah.
And sports some of the worst old age makeup from
I always forget this part of the
90s.
movie. Yeah.
That's because it's so awful. Your brain has blocked it out. It's
Yep.
also completely unnecessary.
Yes, it is. That's all true.
But yeah, it's weird to see her with long blonde hair. She looks weird in it.
That feels like Tim Burton's Hitchcock moment. He does this with a couple. He does it with Christina Ricci also in why can't I think of it? Sleepy Hollow. That's the dark girl with the light hair. Like it's a very him thing to do.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And then of course we both had number 1 as Heathers, which is one of the funniest movies ever made. And a movie that I couldn't, when I first saw it when I was young, I don't know if I could quite wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
I think it took me a while. I think I liked it, but I think it really took me a while to come to realize how unique it is.
I think,
and certainly there has not been. It feels like, You know how some movies, when they try to become cult movies or they try to intentionally be campy, they often seem unbearably lame?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
That's sort of how I feel about a lot of really black comedies or like really acidic, dark comedies.
Yeah.
And like,
oh, yeah.
A lot of the movies that you see today that I think try to do it through just using like profanity or being gross. And that's like their shortcut to what they think is being edgy, or like having young characters say inappropriate things.
Yeah.
And it's just such a shallow misunderstanding of what is possible.
Yeah.
That I think Heathers demonstrates so well, to the degree that I really don't think, even though we've gotten a million black comedies since then, and a lot of those have been very good, there's never quite been a movie like it since it was made.
Agree.
I think it is one of those. This is hard to say because most movies have pretenders after them or movies that they evoke, but it's truly one of those unique movies. I mean, I suppose there are elements of John Hughes aesthetically there that the filmmaker is playing with.
Well, sure. I mean, nobody's standing out there on their own.
But it is really
but
like there's the closest you could get to it, and it's a real Disney-fied version of it. It's probably like Mean Girls.
Sure, yeah. I was just gonna say, I think a lot of people after Heathers maybe tried to be Heathers, and you just can't do it. It's I think it's a movie also that rewards upon multiple views. Like to me, I feel like it's still giving me rewards. It's probably the first true black comedy I saw ever in my life. I don't think I even knew what I was seeing, but I saw it when I was pretty young, sometime in my early teens, I think. And I don't know how much black comedy of that kind was really out there at that time or before. There might have been.
There was a fair amount. I mean, that same year was War of the Roses.
Oh, sure.
Which is I would argue, one of the best black comedies ever made.
Absolutely. But it's a hard thing to pull off, like you say, and a hard thing to do truly well. And Heathers definitely does it truly well. And it just...
Yeah, I think it's because I think a lot of, like I just said, I think a lot of people misunderstand what it is that makes it great. I mean, this happens all the time in Hollywood. Like a movie will come out and people will take the wrong lessons from that movie. And then you'll get a bunch of knockoffs, but none of them will be that good because they weren't looking at like Blade Runner. Yeah, is a good example. Like there were so many Blade Runner knockoffs after Blade Runner, but none of them were good because they were so concentrated on replicating that aesthetic that they never stopped to think that like there were some really interesting ideas that Blade Runner is grappling with. Right. And also that it was itself playing with old film genres like noir.
Yeah.
And reflecting those and playing with them in interesting ways. And none of those movies that not none, but most of the movies that ripped off that movie didn't even think to try to do that kind of stuff. And I feel like Heathers is sort of the same thing. People looked at it and they were like, oh, it's edgy. We should try to be edgy too, without like actually examining how it operated, how it worked. And one of the things that's great about it is how, even though it's dark as shit, how innocent it sort of seems, how it opens with that music, and it has this like very sunny aesthetic, this very cheery looking aesthetic.
Well, I was gonna talk about the aesthetic.
It's like Donna Reed-ish almost.
I almost couldn't describe to you the aesthetic, but it has such a good aesthetic. Like I think it's a fantastic aesthetic, but as you said, the aesthetic also isn't the point. It's supporting what's going on in the film. I think it supports it very well, but it's not the point. So if you just look at that, well, you've missed it. Yeah. I think that's all really true. Yeah, it's got, I wish I could, maybe Donna Reed is the closest you could come, but it's like Donna Reed with an edge or something. Like, I don't even know. What is the aesthetic of Heathers? I couldn't tell you.
It's a little Leave It to Beavery.
It's really good though.
Yeah. It's playing with it's like there's some of the 50s and some of the 80s but
you've also got things like all the girls wear the same color throughout the whole film. Like each girl is assigned a color and they wear that color. Their rooms are that color. Like there's things like that I don't know how to describe to you what that is, but those pull throughs, those threads are evocative and great.
Yeah.
I mean, almost like an Archie comic, maybe.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's the aesthetic.
We should
I'm
dedicate
feeling.
a whole episode just to the teen, because it was the golden era of teen cinema in the 1980s.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't just John Hughes. There were so many.
There was a wide range of really interesting.
Everything from Fast Times at the beginning of the decade to Heathers at the end.
Yeah.
There were so many amazing teen movies doing interesting filmic. Risky Business is another one.
So
Just so
interesting.
much great, interesting, different takes on the teen movie.
Yeah.
From that era that were so good that really weren't done again.
True.
All right, so there you have it. I guess,
So how do you feel about Winona at this point?
if you were going to make an argument, I keep thinking, like, is Molly Ringwald more of a Gen X icon than Winona? And if she was, it would really be based on a couple movies, which is what we're doing with Winona, right? It's really Heathers and Reality Bites. And I think what puts her over the top of, Breakfast Club / Pretty in Pink is her celebrity outside of film and the running with Johnny Depp and her whole background that you went through at the beginning, her links to people like Timothy Leary,
her almost beat poet-esque background.
Her experience being in a commune and just like her wild life narrative.
Very bohemian.
Makes her like, I think, the Gen X actor in some way beyond just the parts she played, which are
the
very
fact
Gen X.
that she's pulled into things like Stranger Things and used as a visual callback, frankly, right? Like
Right.
it's I think that makes the argument pretty strongly too.
Well, there you have it. The Long Rewind has decreed, all hail Queen Winona.
Queen Winona,
Queen of
we
the
love
Gen
you.
X cineasts.
Yep.
All right.
You rock, Winona. Winona forever.
Winona forever. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you again soon.
Bye-bye. You've been listening to The Long Rewind. The program is produced by Dustin Morrow and hosted by me, Lisa Molinelli. If you enjoy the show, please consider hitting the subscribe button, leave us a good review on your podcast app, and tell your friends about the program. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.